You're nothing but a failure, Nkem. A useless woman who can't even give me a healthy child. The words exploded across the dining room like grenades, shattering the fragile peace of what was supposed to be a quiet Sunday dinner. Nkem Okonkwo froze, her hand trembling as she held the serving spoon over the jollof rice. The ceramic bowl slipped from her grip and crashed onto the mahogany table, spilling red grains across the expensive tablecloth her mother-in-law had gifted them 3 years ago. Her husband Tunde stood at the head of the table, his face twisted with disgust, his designer suit still immaculate despite the rage radiating from every pore. Their 7-year-old daughter Zara sat between them, her small body rigid with fear, her breathing laboured as it always was these days. The child's inhaler sat next to her untouched plate, a constant reminder of the sickle cell disease that had slowly been draining the life from their family. Welcome to Tales by AJ, where we bring you the most gripping African family dramas that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Thank you so much for your incredible support. Your likes, comments, and subscriptions mean the world to us. Before we dive into today's story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Are you Team Justice or Team Forgiveness? Let's find out together. Now, back to our story. Nkem's throat constricted. Tunde, please, not in front of Zara. Don't you dare tell me what to do in my own house. He slammed his fist on the table, making the plates jump. Zara whimpered, reaching for her mother's arm. I'm done pretending everything is fine. I'm done playing happy family while you drag us down with your mediocrity and that sick child. The Lagos skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of their Ikoyi penthouse, oblivious to the destruction happening within its walls. Outside, the city pulsed with life, honking horns, street vendors calling out their wares, the distant sound of Afrobeats from a nearby club. Inside, Nkem's world was imploding. That sick child! Nkem's voice came out as barely a whisper. She's your daughter, Tunde, our daughter. Is she? Tunde's eyes glinted with cruelty. Because a real man would have a healthy child. A real wife would have given me sons, strong sons, not this weak thing that costs me thousands every month in hospital bills. Zara's breathing became more laboured. Nkem immediately moved to her daughter's side, reaching for the inhaler, but Tunde's next words stopped her cold. I want a divorce. The declaration hung in the air like smoke. Nkem turned slowly, the inhaler clutched in her hand. What did you say? You heard me. Tunde straightened his tie, suddenly calm, as if he'd been waiting for this moment. I'm done with this marriage. I'm done with you, and I'm done pretending I want to be a father to that child. Nkem administered Zara's inhaler with shaking hands, her mind racing. 7 years of marriage. 7 years of loving this man, supporting his business ventures, entertaining his colleagues, playing the perfect wife. 7 years of watching her vibrant, intelligent daughter struggle with an illness neither of them had asked for. You can't be serious, she said, her voice stronger now. We made vows, Tunde, before God, before our families. Vows? He laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. What about your vow to be a good wife? What about giving me the life I deserve? Look at you, Nkem. When was the last time you even tried to look attractive? You've let yourself go, you're always tired, always stressed about Zara's medication, her doctor's appointments. I married a beautiful woman, and now I'm stuck with a tired, worn-out shadow. Each word was a knife, precise and devastating. Nkem looked down at herself, her simple Ankara dress, comfortable but not fashionable, her natural hair pulled back in a practical bun, her hands rough from constant hand-washing and sanitizing everything Zara touched. When had she stopped being the woman who'd captivated Tunde Okonkwo at that corporate gala 7 years ago? When had survival replaced living? I've been taking care of our daughter, she said quietly. I've been trying to keep our family together. Well, it's not enough. Tunde pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, then held it up so she could see. The screen showed a woman, young, probably mid-20s, with flawless makeup, a Kim Kardashian body, and a smile that promised everything Nkem had apparently failed to provide. "This is Yetunde. She's everything you're not. Beautiful, successful, fun. She actually makes me happy." The floor seemed to tilt beneath Nkem's feet. "How long? Does it matter? How long, Tunde?" Zara started crying, her small shoulders shaking. Nkem immediately pulled her daughter into her arms, shooting her husband a look of pure fury, but Tunde was unmoved. 2 years, he said casually, as if discussing the weather. "She's a marketing executive at Radiance Corporation, smart, ambitious, and she actually wants to be with me, not just my money." 2 years. While Nkem had been rushing Zara to emergency rooms in the middle of the night, while she'd been sitting through blood transfusions holding her daughter's hand, while she'd been sacrificing sleep and sanity to keep their child alive, Tunde had been building a whole other life. "You're despicable," she whispered. "I'm realistic." He pocketed his phone. "My lawyer will contact you tomorrow. I'm being generous, Nkem. I'll give you the house in Lekki, the small one, not this penthouse. And I'll provide basic child support for Zara until she's 18, assuming she lives that long. But I want this done quickly and quietly. No drama, no scandal. You sign the papers. We move on with our lives." "And if I don't?" Tunde's smile was cold. "Then I'll make sure everyone knows what a failure you are as a wife and mother. I have friends in the media, Nkem. Friends who'd love a story about how my daughter's illness is really because of your family's genetic defects. I'll ruin your reputation so thoroughly that no one in Lagos will even acknowledge you exist." It was the ultimate betrayal, using their daughter's illness as a weapon, threatening to weaponize public opinion against them. Nkem felt something break inside her, some last thread of hope that the man she'd married still existed somewhere beneath this monster. "Get out," she said quietly. "Excuse me." "I said get out." The words erupted from her with volcanic force. "This is still my home until your lawyers say otherwise. Get out, Tunde. Go to your precious Yetunde. Leave us alone." For a moment, something flickered across his face, maybe regret, maybe shame. But it vanished quickly, replaced by cold indifference. He grabbed his car keys from the console table, adjusted his watch, a Patek Philippe she'd given him for their 5th anniversary, and headed for the door. "You'll regret this attitude, Nkem. I was offering you a clean break. Now you'll get what you deserve, nothing." The door slammed behind him, leaving mother and daughter alone in the wreckage of their family. Zara sobbed into Nkem's chest, her small body racked with the kind of grief no 7-year-old should understand. Nkem held her tight, her own tears finally falling, hot and bitter against her cheeks. "It's going to be okay, baby," she whispered, rocking Zara gently. "Mama's going to make sure everything is okay." But even as she said the words, she wondered if they were true. How could anything ever be okay again? Her phone buzzed on the table. Through blurred vision, she saw the screen light up with a notification, an email. The subject line made her heart stop. "Congratulations! 100 billion contract award, Nkem Okonkwo and Associates." Nkem stared at the words, certain she was hallucinating. The proposal she'd submitted 6 months ago, the one she'd been told had no chance, the massive infrastructure project she'd poured her heart into while Tunde mocked her little hobby business. It couldn't be real. Her hands shaking, she opened the email. It was real. The government contract she'd bid on, a 10-year infrastructure development project worth 100 billion naira, had been awarded to her firm. Her firm, the consulting company she'd built from nothing while pregnant with Zara, the business Tunde had always dismissed as amateur hour. The email was time-stamped 6:47 p.m. 23 minutes before Tunde had asked for a divorce. He had no idea. He'd just walked away from her, called her a failure, threatened to ruin her reputation, all while she was sitting on the biggest business deal in Nigerian history. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so devastating. Nkem looked down at her daughter, who had finally cried herself into exhausted sleep against her shoulder. She looked at the destroyed dinner, the spilled jollof rice already congealing on the expensive tablecloth. She looked at the email that would change everything, and slowly, through the tears and heartbreak, something else began to bloom, something cold and sharp and absolutely determined. If Tunde wanted a divorce, he would get one. But not on his terms, never again on his terms. What would you do if your husband called you a failure right before you became a millionaire? Hit like if you believe in karma and comment below where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what Nkem does next. Will she tell Tunde about the contract? Will she fight for her marriage or let him go? Drop your predictions below. The morning sun cut through the bedroom curtains like an accusation, harsh and unforgiving. Nkem hadn't slept. She'd spent the entire night holding Zara, watching her daughter's chest rise and fall with each precious breath. Alternating between reading and rereading the contract email and staring at her phone, waiting for Tunde to call, to apologize, to say he'd made a terrible mistake. He never called. At 6 a.m., Zara finally stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Mama, where's Daddy?" The question pierced Nkem's heart. How do you tell a 7-year-old that her father has abandoned her, that he'd called her a burden, a weakness, something to be discarded? "Daddy had to go away for work, sweetheart," Nkem lied, hating herself for it. "But Mama's here. Mama's always here." Zara's face crumpled. Even at 7, she wasn't stupid. She'd heard everything last night. "Daddy doesn't love us anymore, does he?" Nkem pulled her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her hair, cocoa butter, and innocence. "That's not true, baby. Daddy's just confused right now. But no matter what happens, you and I are going to be fine. Better than fine, I promise you." After getting Zara settled with breakfast and her morning medications, 3 pills she had to take every day just to keep her blood cells from destroying themselves, Nkem locked herself in the bathroom and finally let herself break down. She sobbed silently into a towel, her body shaking with the force of 7 years of suppressed pain, disappointment, and exhaustion. But she only allowed herself 10 minutes. 10 minutes to be weak, to be the victim, to feel sorry for herself. Then she washed her face, looked at herself in the mirror, really looked, and saw what Tunde had seen. A tired woman, a defeated woman, a woman who'd forgotten she was powerful. "Not anymore," she whispered to her reflection. "Never again." By 9 a.m., she was dressed in her best business suit, a sharp navy blue number she hadn't worn since before Zara's last hospitalization. She'd called her younger sister Ify to come watch Zara, made 3 critical phone calls, and was sitting in the lobby of Okoye and Partners, the most ruthless law firm in Lagos. The receptionist, a young woman with perfectly sculpted eyebrows and a suspicious expression, looked her up and down. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but tell Mrs. Okoye that Nkem Okonkwo is here about a divorce that's about to become very expensive for someone. She'll see me." 5 minutes later, Nkem was sitting across from Serena Okoye, a woman whose reputation for destroying unfaithful husbands in divorce court was legendary. She was in her mid-50s, elegant in a way that spoke of old money and older wisdom. Her grey locks pulled back in an intricate style that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. "Mrs. Okonkwo," Serena said, her voice smooth as aged whiskey, "I've heard about your husband, Tunde Okonkwo of Okonkwo Enterprises, real estate developer, correct? You know him. I know of him, and I know of his girlfriend, Yetunde Badmus. They've been quite public lately, though I suspect they thought they were being discreet." Serena opened a folder on her desk, revealing photos. Tunde and Yetunde at a restaurant in Victoria Island. Tunde and Yetunde getting into his car at a hotel. Tunde and Yetunde shopping together at the Palms Mall, his hand on the small of her back, possessive and proud. Nkem's stomach turned. How long have you had these? A mutual friend thought you might need them eventually. Women look out for each other, Mrs. Okonkwo, especially in this city where men think they can have everything. Serena closed the folder. Now, tell me what happened. Nkem told her everything. The dinner confrontation, Tunde's threats, his offer of the small house and minimal child support, his cruel words about Zara. She told her about the 2 years of infidelity, the calculated coldness, the way he'd planned this whole thing while she'd been focused on keeping their daughter alive. And then she told her about the contract. Serena's eyes widened, the first genuine emotion she'd shown. 100 billion naira? The infrastructure development project. That was you? My firm won it. The notification came 23 minutes before my husband asked for a divorce. Does he know? No. A slow smile spread across Serena's face. Predatory and beautiful. Oh, Mrs. Okonkwo, this is going to be fun. Tell me, what do you want from this divorce? Nkem didn't hesitate. Everything. I want the penthouse, the investment properties, his shares in Okonkwo Enterprises. I want full custody of Zara with him paying maximum child support. I want alimony that reflects the lifestyle I maintained for 7 years. And I want him to know, publicly, that he threw away the best thing that ever happened to him. What about the contract money? Do you want to keep that separate? The contract is mine, my firm, my work, my achievement. He has no claim to it. But I want to make sure he can't touch a single kobo of it. Serena nodded approvingly. Smart, very smart. Here's what we're going to do. First, we file for divorce today, before his lawyers can. We cite adultery, emotional abuse, and abandonment of a sick child. The courts will love that, especially if we get the right judge. Second, we immediately freeze all joint assets. He can't sell anything, transfer anything, or hide anything until the divorce is settled. Third, we go after everything he built during your marriage because, legally, you're entitled to half of it. But I didn't build his business. Didn't you? Serena leaned forward. Who entertained his clients? Who planned the dinners that closed his deals? Who maintained the home that gave him the stability to work 80-hour weeks? Who sacrificed her own career to raise his child while he was building his empire? You built that business just as much as he did, Mrs. Okonkwo. The law recognizes that, even if he doesn't. For the first time since last night, Nkem felt something other than pain. She felt powerful. She felt dangerous. There's one more thing, she said quietly. I don't want him to know about the contract until the divorce is finalized. Can we do that? Serena's smile turned wicked. Oh, we absolutely can. In fact, I insist on it. Let him think he's winning. Let him think he's getting away clean with his little girlfriend. And then, when the ink is dry and he can't touch you legally anymore, we'll let him find out exactly what he lost. They spent the next 2 hours going over every detail of Nkem's marriage. Bank accounts, properties, investments, cars, jewelry, everything. Serena's paralegal took notes, occasionally gasping at some new revelation of Tunde's wealth or Nkem's contributions to building that wealth. He's going to fight dirty, Serena warned. Men like him always do. He'll try to paint you as an unfit mother, a gold digger, maybe even claim you were unfaithful. Are you prepared for that? I've been faithful for 7 years while he was sleeping with that girl. I've been a good mother while he ignored his sick daughter. Let him try. I have nothing to hide. Good, because this is going to get ugly before it gets beautiful. Nkem left the law office feeling lighter than she had in years. The afternoon traffic on Ozumba Mbadiwe Road was its usual chaos, but she barely noticed. She had a plan. She had a warrior in her corner. And she had a secret weapon Tunde knew nothing about. When she got home, Ify was sitting on the couch with Zara, watching Nollywood movies and eating chin-chin. Her sister looked up, concern written all over her face. Nkem, what's going on? You look different. I am different. Nkem sat down, pulled Zara into her lap. Ify, I need to tell you something, but you can't tell anyone, not Mama, not your friends, nobody. Can you promise me that? Ify nodded, suddenly serious. What is it? Nkem told her about the contract. Ify screamed so loud that Zara jumped, then laughed, then screamed again. Are you serious? 100 billion naira? Nkem, do you know what this means? You're rich. You're actually rich. We're not rich yet. The contract is for 10 years, and we have to actually do the work. But yes, the company's value just increased by about 1,000%. And Tunde doesn't know? Ify's face split into a grin that could only be described as evil. Oh my God, Nkem, this is like a movie. He divorced you right before you became a billionaire. He doesn't know yet. And he's not going to know until after the divorce is final. Serena Okoye is handling everything. Serena Okoye, the Serena Okoye, the woman who took that oil tycoon for everything including his boat. Ify clutched her chest dramatically. Sister, Tunde is finished, done, destroyed. Despite everything, Nkem smiled. It felt foreign on her face, like a muscle she'd forgotten how to use. I know. That evening, her phone finally rang. Tunde's name flashed on the screen. Nkem stared at it for a long moment, then answered. Nkem? His voice was clipped, professional, as if she was a business associate and not the woman who'd shared his bed for 7 years. My lawyer will be contacting you tomorrow. I expect you to sign the divorce papers without any drama. I've been more than fair in my offer. Actually, Tunde, I've already filed for divorce. My lawyer will be contacting yours. I expect this to be settled fairly, which means according to the law, not according to your convenience. Silence. Then, what did you just say? I filed first, this morning. You want a divorce? You'll get one. But not on your terms. Never again on your terms. Nkem, don't do this. Don't make this harder than it has to be. You know I can make your life very difficult if you fight me. Is that a threat? It's a reality. I have resources, connections, power. You have nothing. Sign the papers I'm offering you, take the house in Lekki, and let's both move on with dignity. Nkem looked at her daughter, who was watching her with those big, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. She thought about the contract email sitting in her inbox, about Serena Okoye's wicked smile, about the photos of Tunde and Yetunde that she now had copies of. See you in court, Tunde. She hung up before he could respond. Her hands were shaking, but from adrenaline now, not fear. She'd just declared war on one of the most powerful men in Lagos, and he had no idea what was coming for him. Her phone buzzed immediately. A text from an unknown number. This is Yetunde. Leave Tunde alone. He doesn't want you anymore. Move on before you embarrass yourself. Nkem stared at the message, feeling that cold, sharp thing inside her crystallize into something harder, something unbreakable. She typed back, "Tell my husband I'll see him in court. And get your own man, sweetie. This one's about to lose everything." She blocked the number before Yetunde could respond. Ify whistled low. "Sister, you're scary when you're angry." "I love it." "I'm not angry," Nkem said quietly, and she meant it. Anger was hot, chaotic, easily manipulated. What she felt was colder, cleaner, more purposeful. "I'm done being a victim. Now I'm going to show Tunde Okonkwo exactly who he married and exactly what he lost." That night, after Zara was asleep, Nkem opened her laptop and started planning. She reviewed the contract details, mapped out her strategy for the divorce, made lists of every asset, every account, every property that she knew about. She worked until 3 a.m., fueled by determination and the bitter satisfaction of finally taking control of her own life. She didn't know that across the city, in a luxury apartment in Banana Island, Tunde was having his own moment of reckoning. His lawyer had just called with news that Nkem had filed first. that she'd hired Nkem Okonkwo, and that this was going to be much more complicated than he'd anticipated. "Damn it," Tunde muttered, pacing his girlfriend's living room while Yetunde watched from the couch, her perfect face creased with concern. She was supposed to just accept it, just sign the papers and disappear quietly. "Maybe you underestimated her," Yetunde suggested, twirling a strand of her Brazilian weave around her finger. "Maybe she's not as weak as you thought." Tunde shot her a look. "She's weak, she just doesn't know it yet. But she will. By the time my lawyers are done with her, she'll wish she'd taken my offer. Trust me." But even as he said it, something nagged at him. Something about the tone in Nkem's voice when she'd said, "Never again on your terms." Something that sounded less like desperation and more like promise. He pushed the thought away. Nkem was nothing. A housewife with a sick kid and a failing business. What could she possibly do to hurt him? Is Tunde about to learn the hardest lesson of his life? Do you think Nkem should tell him about the contract or let him find out the hard way? Drop a comment and let us know. Hit that like button if you're Team Nkem, and don't forget to subscribe because this story is about to get intense. What do you think Tunde will do when he finds out the truth? Share your predictions below. 3 weeks had passed since the night that shattered Nkem's world, and Lagos was doing what it always did, moving forward with relentless energy, indifferent to individual suffering. But for Nkem, every day felt like walking through fire while pretending to be made of steel. The divorce papers had been flying back and forth between lawyers like missiles. Tunde's legal team, a trio of sharp-suited men from Hughes and Davies, had come out swinging, painting Nkem as an opportunistic wife who'd contributed nothing to the marriage and was now trying to steal what Tunde had built with his own hands. They'd filed counterclaims, demanded immediate access to all her financial records, and were pushing for a quick settlement that would leave her with barely enough to survive. Serena had laughed when she'd read their proposals. "Amateurs," she'd said, tossing the papers aside. "They think this is about money. They have no idea what's coming." Nkem was sitting in her temporary office, a renovated warehouse space in Yaba that her small consulting firm had been using for the past 3 years, when her business partner David walked in carrying 2 bottles of malt and wearing an expression that could only be described as shell-shocked. "Nkem," he said, sitting down heavily, "the ministry just transferred the first payment, 15 billion naira. It's actually in our account." Nkem looked up from the spreadsheet she'd been reviewing, project timelines and budget allocations for the infrastructure contract that would define the next decade of her life. "I know. I got the notification an hour ago." "You know?" David's voice cracked. 15 billion just appeared in our business account, and you're sitting here like it's a normal Tuesday. Nkem, do you understand what this means? We went from a firm with 3 employees and barely breaking even to having more money than most people see in 10 lifetimes. "We need to hire," Nkem said calmly, though inside her heart was racing. "Engineers, project managers, accountants, legal advisors. We need to expand the office, probably find a bigger space. We need to open subsidiary accounts, set up proper corporate structures. And we need to do all of this quietly, without drawing attention." David stared at her. "Who are you, and what have you done with my partner?" The Nkem I know would be screaming, dancing, calling everyone she knows. "The Nkem you knew is gone." She closed her laptop. "The woman sitting here now has a sick daughter to protect, and an ex-husband who would destroy her if he knew what she'd just accomplished. So no, David, I'm not celebrating. Not yet. Not until my divorce is final and my daughter is safe." Tunde still doesn't know? "Nobody knows except you, me, Serena and Ify, and it needs to stay that way. Can you handle keeping this secret?" David nodded slowly. "You know I can, but Nkem, people are going to find out eventually. A project this big, with this much money, the media will be all over it. The business community will be talking. How long can you really keep this hidden?" "Long enough." She opened a drawer in her desk, pulled out a folder. I need you to start the hiring process. Use your contacts, be discreet, and make sure everyone we bring on board signs ironclad NDAs. We're looking for excellence, integrity, and people who know how to keep their mouths shut. Can you do that? Consider it done. David stood, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, Tunde is an idiot. He had a brilliant woman and he threw her away. His loss is about to become legendary. After he left, Nkem allowed herself a moment to feel the weight of what was happening. 15 billion naira, just the first payment. There would be more structured payments over the life of the contract, each one building her company's wealth, each one taking her further from the woman who'd cowered in her marriage, terrified of her husband's moods and her daughter's mortality. Her phone rang. Serena's name flashed on the screen. "We have a problem," Serena said without preamble. "Tunde's lawyers just filed a motion claiming you're hiding assets. They're demanding full disclosure of your business finances." Nkem's blood ran cold. "They can't do that. My business has nothing to do with the marriage." "Actually, they can. And they're well within their rights to ask. Any business started during the marriage is potentially marital property. We can fight it, delay it, but eventually we're going to have to disclose something." "How much time do we have?" "The hearing is in 2 weeks. Judge Nwosu is presiding and she doesn't play games. If we show up without proper financial disclosure, she'll rule against us automatically. We need a strategy, Nkem." Nkem closed her eyes, thinking fast. "What if we show them the old financial statements, the ones from before the contract? Show them that my business was barely profitable, that it's not worth fighting over?" "That could work, but only if they don't dig deeper. If they start asking questions about recent activity, recent contracts, we're exposed. And once it comes out in court, it becomes public record. Everyone will know. Then we need to settle before it gets to that point. Nkem, we talked about this. If you settle now, you lose leverage. Tunde will lowball you, claim you're desperate, and you'll walk away with pennies compared to what you deserve. And if he finds out about the contract during discovery, he'll claim he deserves half of it. Or worse, he'll drag this out for years trying to get a piece of it. No. Better to settle on my terms now, while he thinks I'm weak, than fight him when he knows I'm powerful." Serena was quiet for a long moment. "You're sure about this?" "Because once we offer a settlement, we lose the element of surprise. We lose the satisfaction of watching him realize what he threw away." "I don't need satisfaction. I need protection for my daughter and freedom from that man. Make him an offer, Serena. Give him enough that he feels like he won, but not enough to hurt us, and get it done fast." "What about the house, the penthouse?" "Let him have it. It was never mine anyway. It was always his trophy. I'll take the Lecky house like he originally offered, plus fair child support for Zara and enough alimony to maintain her medical care. Make it look like I'm being reasonable, even generous. Nkem, you're entitled to so much more." "I know, but I'd rather be free and secretly wealthy than trapped in court with a vengeful ex-husband who knows I'm worth billions. Please, Serena, trust me on this." After the call ended, Nkem sat in the silence of her office, looking out at the Lagos skyline. Somewhere out there, Tunde was probably celebrating, thinking he'd broken her, thinking he'd won. Let him think that. Let him marry his girlfriend, live in his penthouse, enjoy his perceived victory. He would never know that the woman he'd called a failure was about to become one of the wealthiest businesswomen in Nigeria. He would never know that while he was gloating about getting rid of his burden, she was building an empire that would outlast anything he'd ever achieved. That evening, Nkem picked up Zara from her sister's house. Ify met her at the door with a worried expression. "Mama called," Ify said quietly, glancing back to make sure Zara couldn't hear. "She heard about the divorce. She wants to talk to you." Nkem's stomach clenched. Their mother, Blessing Okafor, was a traditional woman who believed marriage was sacred, that divorce was shameful, that a good wife should endure anything to keep her family together. The conversation Nkem was about to have would not be pleasant. "Tell her I'll call her tomorrow. She's already on her way here. She said she needs to talk sense into you before you make the biggest mistake of your life." Of course she was, because nothing said supportive family like showing up uninvited to lecture a woman whose husband had just abandoned her and their sick child. 20 minutes later, Blessing Okafor swept into Ife's living room like a storm cloud in traditional wrapper and booba, her face set in lines of disapproval that Nkem knew all too well. At 62, their mother was still a force of nature, all righteous conviction and zero tolerance for what she perceived as weakness or rebellion. "Nkem," she said, not bothering with greetings. "What is this nonsense I'm hearing about divorce? You have a child, a home, a husband. You don't just throw that away because of some small problem." "Small problem?" Nkem kept her voice level, mindful of Zara playing in the next room. "Mama, he's been cheating on me for 2 years. He called our daughter a burden. He told me he doesn't want to be married to me anymore. That's not a small problem. Men make mistakes. They have their outside women. This is not new. But you don't destroy your home because of it. You pray, you fast, you wait for him to come to his senses." "He's not coming to his senses, Mama. He wants to marry her. He's already moved out." Blessing waved her hand dismissively. "So, let him play house with his small girl. She will tire of him soon enough, and he will come back to his real wife, his real family. If you divorce him now, you give that girl exactly what she wants. You make it easy for them." Nkem felt the familiar frustration rising, the same feeling she'd had 1,000 times growing up, trying to make her mother understand that the world had changed, that women didn't have to accept betrayal and disrespect just to maintain the appearance of marriage. "Mama, I filed for divorce. It's already in progress." Her mother's eyes widened. "You filed? You filed? Nkem, have you lost your mind? A woman does not divorce her husband. A woman keeps her home together no matter what. Even if it's killing her. Even if staying means teaching her daughter that she has no value, that she should accept being treated like garbage. It's called sacrifice. It's called being a good wife. Do you think your father never looked at other women? Do you think every marriage is perfect? But I stayed. I endured. And look at us now, still together after 40 years. Nkem bit back the words she wanted to say about her parents' marriage, about the years of watching her father drink too much and her mother cry in the kitchen when she thought no one was looking, about the silent dinners and separate bedrooms, and the hollowness of a union held together by pride and religion rather than love. "I'm not you, Mama," she said instead. "And I'm not going to model that kind of marriage for my daughter. She deserves to see a mother who knows her worth." Her worth. Blessing's voice rose. "What worth does a divorced woman have in this society? People will talk, Nkem. They will say you couldn't keep your husband. They will say there must be something wrong with you. And what about Zara, growing up without a father in the house? Do you know how hard that will be for her? Harder than growing up with a father who thinks she's a burden, who doesn't even want to see her. He will change his mind once you stop this foolishness. Enough!" The word exploded from Nkem with such force that both her mother and Evie jumped. In the next room, Zara went quiet. Nkem lowered her voice, but the steel remained. "Mama, I love you. I respect you. But this is my life, my marriage, my decision. Tunde doesn't want us anymore. He made that very clear. And I am not going to beg a man to stay who doesn't want to be here." "So you're just going to give up? Let him win?" A bitter laugh escaped Nkem. "Oh, Mama, he hasn't won anything. He just doesn't know it yet." Something in her tone must have registered because Blessing paused, studying her daughter with new eyes. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm going to be fine, better than fine. Zara and I are going to be just fine without him." "How? What money do you have? What prospects? You have a sick child and medical bills that cost a fortune every month. You think that small consulting business of yours will support you? Be realistic, Nkem, you need him. And there it was, the fundamental difference between them. Blessing had built her entire life on needing a man, on accepting whatever treatment she received because she believed she had no other options. She couldn't imagine that her daughter might be different, might be building something that made her not just independent, but powerful. I don't need him, Mama. I never did. I just thought I did. Nkem stood up, signaling that the conversation was over. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to take my daughter home and give her her evening medication. Blessing rose as well, her face a mask of disappointment and worry. You're making a terrible mistake, Nkem. One day you will regret this pride. Maybe, but I'd rather regret being strong than regret staying weak. After her mother left, muttering prayers and predictions of doom, Ify handed Nkem a glass of wine and sat down beside her. That was intense, Ify said. That was Mama being Mama. She means well, but she doesn't understand. Does anyone know the truth about the contract? Just you, David, and Serena. And it needs to stay that way. If Mama knew, she'd probably try to use it to convince Tunde to come back, thinking she was helping. Ify laughed, then sobered. Nkem, are you okay? Really okay? Because you're acting so strong, so controlled. But you just lost your marriage. Your husband of 7 years is gone. You're allowed to fall apart. Nkem looked at her sister, this woman who'd always been the baby of the family, the protected one, the one who'd never had to fight for anything. I fell apart the night he left, Ify. I cried. I screamed into a towel. I questioned everything about myself. I gave myself 10 minutes to be a victim. And then I decided I was done being weak. Done being the woman everyone pitied. If I'm going to raise Zara alone, if I'm going to build this company, if I'm going to survive this, I can't afford to fall apart. I have to be stronger than I've ever been. But you're human, sister. You're allowed to grieve. I'll grieve later, when my daughter is secure, when my company is stable, when my divorce is final, and Tunde can never hurt us again. Then I'll grieve, but not now. Now I have to be a warrior. That night, after putting Zara to bed in the small Lekki house that would soon legally be theirs, Nkem checked her email one more time. There was a message from Serena. Tunde's lawyers accepted the settlement offer. They think they're getting away with highway robbery. The hearing is scheduled for next week to make it official. Congratulations, Nkem. You're about to be a free woman. Nkem stared at the message, waiting to feel something, relief, sadness, regret. But all she felt was tired, bone-deep, soul-crushing tired, and underneath that exhaustion, a flicker of something else. Something that might eventually become pride, or satisfaction, or even joy. She was going to be free. Free from Tunde's criticism, his coldness, his cruelty. Free to build the life she wanted. The life she deserved. Free to be the mother Zara needed. Present and engaged and not constantly walking on eggshells around an angry husband. And Tunde. Tunde would get everything he thought he wanted. The penthouse, his girlfriend, his freedom. He would think he'd won. He would congratulate himself on escaping a marriage that had become inconvenient, on trading in his old life for a shiny new one. And he would never, ever know what he'd really lost. The courthouse in Lagos Island was exactly as Nkem remembered from the one time she'd been there years ago. A sprawling colonial-era building with high ceilings, peeling paint, and the particular smell of old documents and stale air conditioning. She sat on a wooden bench outside courtroom 7, Serena beside her in a power suit that probably cost more than the average Nigerian's yearly salary, waiting for their case to be called. Across the hallway, Tunde sat with his legal team, looking confident and relaxed in a custom-fitted grey suit. Yetunde was with him, clinging to his arm like a designer accessory, her makeup flawless, her body language screaming possession. She kept whispering things in his ear that made him smile, and every so often she'd glance over at Nkem with a look of pure triumph. Nkem felt nothing. Not anger, not jealousy, not even contempt. Just a distant clinical interest in watching two people who had no idea they were celebrating a Pyrrhic victory. "He looks pleased with himself," Serena murmured, following Nkem's gaze. "He should be. He thinks he's getting exactly what he wanted." "And you're sure you don't want to wipe that smirk off his face? Because we still have time. I could file a motion, demand full discovery, drag this out for months." "No, let him have this. Let them both have this moment." Zara shifted in Nkem's lap, tired from the long wait and the formal clothes Nkem had insisted she wear. Her daughter had been surprisingly resilient through all of this, perhaps because children had an amazing capacity to adapt, or perhaps because she understood, on some level, that life with just her mother would be better than life with a father who resented her existence. "Mama," Zara whispered, "is Daddy going to talk to me?" Nkem looked at Tunde, who was studiously avoiding looking at his daughter, and felt her heart break just a little more. "Maybe not today, baby, but it's okay, we're okay." "Okonkwo versus Okonkwo," a court clerk called out, her voice echoing in the hallway. "Courtroom 7, Judge Nwosu presiding." They filed into the courtroom, a cavernous space with wooden pews, a raised bench for the judge, and windows so high that the sunlight came in at strange angles, creating pools of light and shadow. Judge Ifeoma Nwosu was already seated, a woman in her late 50s with reading glasses perched on her nose, and an expression that suggested she'd seen every possible variation of human drama, and was unimpressed by all of it. "Good morning, Your Honor," both legal teams chorused. Judge Nwosu looked over her glasses at the assembled parties. "This is a settlement hearing for the dissolution of marriage between Mr. Tunde Okonkwo and Mrs. Nkem Okonkwo. Both parties have agreed to terms. Mr. Hughes, please present the settlement for the record." Tunde's lead lawyer, a man with silver hair and the kind of confidence that came from never losing, stood up and began reading. "Your Honour, the parties have agreed to the following terms. The marital home located at 15 Banana Island Road shall remain the property of Mr. Okonkwo. The secondary property at 42 Victoria Crest, Lekki, shall be transferred to Mrs. Okonkwo, free and clear of all encumbrances. Mr. Okonkwo shall pay child support in the amount of 200,000 naira monthly for the minor child, Zara Okonkwo, until she reaches age 18. Mrs. Okonkwo shall have primary physical custody, with Mr. Okonkwo having visitation rights to be determined separately." Nkem felt Zara tense beside her at the mention of visitation. They both knew Tunde would never exercise those rights. He'd already made it clear he wanted nothing to do with his sick daughter. "Additionally," Mr. Hughes continued, "Mr. Okonkwo shall pay spousal support in the amount of 300,000 naira monthly for a period of 3 years, after which time Mrs. Okonkwo is expected to be self-sufficient. Both parties waive all claims to each other's separate property and businesses. The marriage is dissolved, effective immediately upon this court's approval." Judge Nwosu turned to Serena. "Mrs. Okoye, your client agrees to these terms?" Serena stood gracefully. "She does, Your Honour, though I must note for the record that Mrs. Okonkwo is being extraordinarily generous in accepting terms that significantly undervalue her contributions to the marriage and Mr. Okonkwo's accumulated wealth." Across the aisle, Tunde's lawyers smirked. They thought they'd won. They thought Serena's comment was just posturing, a lawyer trying to save face for a client who'd gotten a bad deal. "Noted," Judge Nwosu said dryly. She looked at Nkem. "Mrs. Okonkwo, do you understand these terms? Do you agree to them of your own free will, without coercion or duress?" Nkem stood, her voice clear and steady. "Yes, Your Honour, I understand and I agree." "Mr. Okonkwo, same question." Tunde stood, and for the first time that day, he looked directly at Nkem. There was something in his eyes, maybe relief, maybe guilt, maybe just impatience to have this over with so he could move on with his new life. Yes, Your Honour, I agree. Very well. Judge Nwosu signed several documents, her pen scratching across the paper with a finality that made Nkem's chest tighten. The marriage between Tunde Okonkwo and Nkem Okonkwo is hereby dissolved. The settlement terms are entered into the record and are legally binding as of this date. Both parties are free to remarry. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down with a sharp crack that echoed through the courtroom. It was over. 7 years of marriage ended with a signature and a gavel strike. Nkem sat very still, processing the enormity of what had just happened. She was divorced, single, a single mother with a sick child and a secret fortune that her ex-husband knew nothing about. Tunde was already leaving, Yetunde on his arm, his lawyers trailing behind him like obedient servants. As they passed Nkem's bench, Yetunde paused, unable to resist one final moment of gloating. "No hard feelings, right?" Yetunde said, her voice dripping with full sympathy. "I mean, you did your best, but some women just aren't built for the lifestyle men like Tunde require. At least you got a house out of it. That's something." Nkem looked at her. This girl who couldn't have been more than 25, who thought she'd won some great prize by stealing another woman's husband. She thought about responding, thought about putting her in her place, thought about all the cutting things she could say. Instead, she smiled. A real smile, genuine and almost pitying. "You're right," Nkem said softly. "Some women aren't built for that lifestyle. I hope you are, Yetunde. I really do. Because maintaining a man like Tunde takes everything you have. Good luck." The smile on Yetunde's face faltered, confused by Nkem's graciousness, suspicious that she was being mocked, but unable to figure out how. Tunde grabbed her arm and pulled her away, throwing one last contemptuous look at his ex-wife. Once they were gone, Serena let out a low whistle. "That took restraint. I'm impressed." "No point in fighting with someone who doesn't know she's already lost," Nkem said, gathering her things. "Come on, Zara, let's go home." Outside the courthouse, Lagos was in full chaos mode. Traffic gridlocked in every direction, hawkers selling everything from phone chargers to roasted plantains, the perpetual soundtrack of honking horns and shouted negotiations. Nkem stood on the courthouse steps, breathing in the hot, humid air, feeling the weight of the divorce papers in her bag and the lightness of freedom in her chest. "Mama?" Zara tugged on her hand. "Are you sad?" Nkem knelt down to her daughter's level. "No, baby, I'm not sad." "Are you?" Zara thought about it seriously. "A little, but also not. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense." Nkem kissed her forehead. "We're going to be okay, you and me. Better than okay." Her phone buzzed, a text from David. "The second payment just cleared, another 12 billion. Nkem, this is really happening. We're really doing this." Nkem pocketed her phone without responding. Tonight, after Zara was asleep, she would sit down with David and start the real work of building her empire. But for now, she just wanted to take her daughter home. Maybe order pizza, maybe watch a Nollywood movie, maybe just exist in this moment of transition between the woman she'd been and the woman she was becoming. They were halfway to Serena's car when Nkem's phone rang. Her mother's name flashed on the screen. She almost didn't answer. But Serena gave her a look that said avoiding this would only make it worse later. "Hello, Mama. It's done?" Her mother's voice was tight. "The divorce is final?" "Yes, it's done." A long sigh, heavy with disappointment. "Then you have made your choice. You have chosen pride over family, independence over duty. I hope it was worth it, Nkem. I hope when you're alone and struggling, you remember that you chose this." "Mama, No, I don't want to hear your excuses. You have embarrassed this family, divorced. In our family, Nkem. No one in our family has ever been divorced. What will people say? What will the church say?" Nkem felt the old familiar guilt trying to claw its way up her throat, the conditioning of a lifetime of being told that other people's opinions mattered more than her own well-being. But she was different now. She had walked through fire and come out forged into something stronger. Let them say what they want, Mama. I have my daughter to think about. That's all that matters. Her mother made a disgusted sound and hung up without another word. Serena gave her a sympathetic look. Family is hard. Family is impossible. Nkem buckled Zara into the back seat of Serena's Mercedes. But I can't worry about that right now. I have bigger problems. Like what? The divorce is settled. You got what you wanted. Like how to build $1 billion company without anyone noticing until it's too late for Tunde to try to claim a piece of it. Like how to protect my daughter while working 18-hour days. Like how to be both a mother and a businesswoman without failing at both. Serena started the car, navigating into the traffic with the kind of aggressive confidence that all Lagos drivers needed to survive. You know what I think? I think you're going to figure it out. Women like you always do. We have to. They drove in comfortable silence for a while, the city flowing past in a blur of colour and chaos. Nkem's mind was already racing ahead, planning, strategizing, preparing for the challenges to come. She had 3 years of spousal support, which would more than cover Zara's medical expenses and their living costs. The Lekki house was small but comfortable, in a good neighbourhood with decent schools. And her business was about to explode in ways that would reshape the entire infrastructure landscape of Nigeria. But first, she needed to stay invisible. She needed to build her empire quietly, carefully, without drawing attention until she was so powerful that Tunde couldn't touch her, even if he wanted to. Serena, she said suddenly, if someone wanted to run $1 billion naira business without it becoming public knowledge, how would they do it? Serena glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Theoretically, shell companies, private holdings, non-disclosure agreements with everyone involved, keep the actual ownership structure buried under layers of legal entities, use nominees for public-facing roles. It can be done, but it's complicated and expensive. But possible? Anything is possible if you have enough money and the right lawyers. Why do you ask? Because I need to disappear, legally speaking. I need to be a nobody, just a divorced single mother trying to make ends meet, while secretly running one of the largest infrastructure projects in Nigerian history. Serena's eyes gleamed with professional interest. Now, that sounds like a challenge I can sink my teeth into. Let me make some calls. I know people who specialize in exactly this kind of corporate invisibility. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is going to cost you. I can afford it. They dropped Nkem and Zara at the Lekki house, which was technically hers now, signed and sealed by the court. It was strange walking into a place that was supposed to be home, but felt like a borrowed space, temporary and uncertain. The furniture was mostly second-hand, bought when Tunde had decided the house wasn't worthy of his expensive taste. The walls needed painting. The kitchen was functional but outdated, but it was hers, and that counted for something. That night, after dinner and baths and bedtime stories, after Zara finally drifted off to sleep with her favourite stuffed elephant clutched in her arms, Nkem sat at her laptop in the small living room and opened her email. There were 17 new messages, all related to the infrastructure contract. Vendor proposals, hiring inquiries, government liaison requests, media outlets asking for interviews about the mysterious small firm that had won such a massive project. She forwarded the media request to David with a note. Decline all interviews, no public statements, complete radio silence until further notice. Then she opened a new document and began writing out her strategy. Phase 1, build the corporate structure that would hide her involvement. Phase 2, hire the best team money could buy, people loyal, discreet, and excellent at their jobs. Phase 3, deliver on the contract so brilliantly that the government would have no choice but to award her future projects. Phase 4, expand into other sectors: real estate, telecommunications, renewable energy. Build an empire so vast and diversified that it would outlast her, something she could leave to Zara: security and power and freedom. She worked until 2 a.m., fueled by coffee and determination, only stopping when her eyes began to blur and her fingers cramped from typing. Across the city, in the penthouse that used to be their marital home, Tunde was having a very different kind of night. Yetunde had cooked dinner, her first attempt at domestic duties, and it had been terrible. Burned chicken, oversalted rice, vegetables that were somehow both raw and mushy. They'd ended up ordering Chinese food, eating it in uncomfortable silence while Yetunde scrolled through Instagram, and Tunde tried to focus on work emails. "I thought you'd be happier," Yetunde said finally, looking up from her phone. "The divorce is final. We can be together now properly. No more sneaking around." "I am happy," Tunde said automatically, but even he could hear how hollow it sounded. "Then why do you keep staring at nothing like someone died?" Good question. Why wasn't he happier? He'd gotten everything he wanted. Freedom from a failing marriage, custody of his wealth, a beautiful young girlfriend who worshipped him. Nkem had signed away her rights without a fight, accepted a settlement that was frankly insulting, and walked away with dignity. He'd won. So why did he feel like something was wrong? Like he'd missed something important? "I'm just tired," he said. "It's been a long day." Yetunde pouted. Too tired to celebrate. She moved closer, her intentions clear, but Tunde found himself making excuses, claiming work stress, promising tomorrow would be better. Later, lying alone in the bed he used to share with Nkem, Tunde found himself thinking about his daughter. Zara, 7 years old and sick, her whole life measured in hospital visits and medication schedules. He'd meant what he said at the divorce hearing. He didn't want to be involved. Every time he looked at her, he saw his own failure, his own genetic weakness that had created a child who would never be strong, never be healthy, never be the kind of offspring he'd imagined having. But there was also something else, something he didn't like to admit, even to himself: guilt. Because Zara hadn't asked to be born with sickle cell disease, she hadn't asked for any of this. And he was abandoning her anyway, choosing his own comfort over his daughter's well-being. His phone buzzed, a text from his mother. "I heard about the divorce. Call me." Tunde deleted the message without responding. The last thing he needed was his mother's lecture about family responsibility and Christian values. She'd never understood that some situations were unsalvageable, that some marriages should end. He closed his eyes, willing himself to sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. His mind kept circling back to that moment in the courtroom, the way Nkem had looked at him, calm and composed, and somehow victorious despite losing everything. The way she'd smiled at Yetunde, not with anger or jealousy, but with something that looked almost like pity. What did she know that he didn't? The thought nagged at him, irrational and persistent. But he pushed it away. Nkem was nothing. A failed wife, a mediocre businesswoman, a woman who'd just lost her meal ticket. Whatever she thought she knew, whatever satisfaction she'd found in that courtroom, it didn't matter. He'd won. He'd moved on. And Nkem Okonkwo would fade into irrelevance. Just another divorced woman struggling to make ends meet while he built his empire higher and higher. He had no idea how wrong he was. The divorce is final, but the real game is just beginning. Do you think Tunde will find out about Nkem's contract? How do you think Yetunde will react when she realizes what she's really gotten herself into? Drop your predictions in the comments. If you're loving this story of karma and justice, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to see it. Don't forget to subscribe because the next chapters are going to be explosive. What would you do in Nkem's position? Let us know below. 6 months had passed since the divorce, and Lagos was experiencing one of its famous rainy seasons, the kind where the sky opened up without warning and turned the streets into rivers, where traffic became even more impossible, and where the wealthy stayed in their air-conditioned sanctuaries while the poor scrambled for shelter. Nkem stood in what was now officially the headquarters of Okafor Infrastructure Development, a gleaming 10-story building in Victoria Island that she'd purchased 2 months ago under a web of shell companies so complex that even she sometimes lost track of who technically owned what. The building had cost her 3 billion naira, but it was worth every kobo. Modern, impressive, with enough space to house the 150 employees she'd hired in the past 6 months. David stood beside her, watching the rain hammer against the floor-to-ceiling windows, both of them holding tablets displaying the latest project updates. Phase 1 of the infrastructure contract was already 20% complete, ahead of schedule and under budget. The government was thrilled. The media was starting to pay attention, and Nkem was still a ghost, her name appearing nowhere in public documents, her face unknown to the journalists who kept trying to interview the mysterious CEO of this upstart company. "We have a problem," David said, his voice tight with tension. Nkem didn't look away from the window. "Tell me." "Forbes Africa wants to do a feature on us. They're calling us one of the fastest-growing infrastructure firms in African history. They want to know who's running the company, who the investors are, how we won such a massive government contract with no previous track record at this scale." "And what did you tell them?" "That we value our privacy and prefer to let our work speak for itself." "But Nkem, they're not going to stop asking. This story is too big. Eventually, someone is going to dig deep enough to find your name, and when they do, I'll be untouchable." She turned to face him. "The divorce has been final for 6 months. Tunde has no legal claim to anything I build now. The spousal support ends in 2.5 years, and I've been documenting every expense, every kobo spent on Zara's care, everything. Even if he tried to come after me, claiming I hid assets during the divorce, we have proof that the business wasn't profitable then. The contract came after, the growth happened after, there's nothing he can do." "Are you sure about that? Because men like Tunde Okonkwo don't just accept being made to look foolish. And when he finds out that his ex-wife is running a billion-dollar company while he's paying her 500,000 naira a month like she's destitute, he's going to lose his mind." "Good." Nkem's smile was cold. "Let him lose his mind. Let him rage and scream and threaten. He can't touch me anymore. That's the whole point." Her phone rang. Serena's name flashed on the screen, and Nkem's stomach immediately tightened. Serena only called during business hours if something was wrong. "Tell me," Nkem answered. "Tunde's lawyers just filed a motion to reduce his child support payments. They're claiming financial hardship." Nkem almost laughed. "Financial hardship? Tunde Okonkwo? The man lives in a penthouse worth 200 million naira." "That's what I said, but apparently his business has hit some rough patches. There's a development deal that fell through, some investors pulled out of a major project, and he's over-leveraged on several properties. His lawyers are arguing that he can't afford the current support payments and requesting they be reduced to 100,000 a month. That's half of what Zara's medications cost monthly." "I know, which is why we're going to fight this so hard that his lawyers will wish they'd never filed. But Nkem, there's something else. They're also requesting a forensic audit of your finances. They want to prove you don't need the support because you're hiding income." There it was. The thing Nkem had been preparing for, the inevitable moment when Tunde would start suspecting she wasn't the struggling single mother he'd left behind. "How did they know to look?" "I don't know. Maybe they saw the house renovations you did. Maybe someone talked. Maybe Tunde just got suspicious about how well you're managing without begging him for money. Does it matter?" "It matters if someone in my organization is leaking information. I'll handle the legal response. You handle your internal security. And Nkem? It might be time to go public. If you come out now on your own terms, you control the narrative. If they dig it up in court, it looks like you are hiding something. After the call ended, Nkem stood very still, feeling the familiar sensation of walls closing in. She'd been so careful, so strategic, building her empire in the shadows while playing the role of struggling single mother in public. But secrets never stayed secret forever, especially not in Lagos, where gossip was currency and everyone knew someone who knew someone. "David," she said quietly, "I need you to find out if anyone in this company has been talking to outsiders about me, about the ownership structure, about anything. Offer a reward for information, and make it very clear that anyone caught leaking will not only be fired, but sued into oblivion." "You think someone here betrayed you?" "I think Tunde is desperate, and desperate men pay well for information. I need to know if someone sold me out." That evening, Nkem picked up Zara from the private school she now attended, a place with small class sizes and nurses on staff who understood sickle cell disease. Her daughter had thrived in the past 6 months, no longer carrying the weight of a toxic home environment. She was still sick, would always be sick, but she was happy. That counted for everything. "Mama!" Zara ran to her, braids flying, uniform slightly disheveled from a day of being a normal 7-year-old. "Guess what? I got an A on my science project." "That's wonderful, baby." Nkem hugged her tight, breathing in the scent of her daughter's hair, cocoa butter, and innocence. "What was your project about?" "Blood cells. I wanted to understand why mine are different. Mrs. Okonkwo said I explained it better than the textbook." Nkem's heart ached with pride and pain. Her daughter was brilliant, curious, determined to understand even the disease that plagued her. She deserved a father who saw that brilliance, who celebrated it. Instead, she had Tunde, who hadn't called or visited once in 6 months, who was now trying to reduce the support that paid for her medication. "How about we celebrate? Ice cream?" "Yes, but Mama, don't you have work?" "Work can wait. You're more important." They went to their favorite ice cream shop in Lekki, a small place with plastic chairs and handmade flavors that Zara loved. While her daughter devoured chocolate ice cream with far too much enthusiasm, Nkem's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I know who you are. I know what you're hiding. We should talk. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Rhapsody's restaurant. Come alone." Nkem's blood ran cold. This wasn't from Tunde's lawyers. The tone was wrong, too informal, too threatening. This was something else, someone else. She looked at Zara, happily oblivious, chocolate smeared across her face, and felt a surge of protective fury. Whoever this was, whatever they wanted, they'd made a mistake. They'd threatened her daughter's peace, and Nkem had learned over the past 6 months that she was capable of protecting what mattered with a ruthlessness that sometimes surprised even herself. She texted back, "Who is this?" The response came immediately. "Someone who can make your life very difficult, or very easy, your choice. 2 p.m. tomorrow, don't be late." Nkem showed the messages to Serena that night, after Zara was asleep. They sat in Nkem's living room, now tastefully renovated with money Nkem had carefully documented as coming from her small business, sipping wine and strategizing. "This could be anyone," Serena said, studying the messages. "A competitor who wants to blackmail you, someone from Tunde's camp trying to gather information, hell, could even be a journalist fishing for a story. What should I do? Go to the meeting, but not alone. I'll have someone nearby recording everything. If this is blackmail, we'll have evidence. If it's just intimidation, we'll know what we're dealing with. And if it's dangerous," Serena gave her a long look, "then we involve the police. But Nkem, you've spent 6 months building something extraordinary while hiding in plain sight. Someone was bound to notice eventually. The question is, what are you willing to do to protect it?" "Anything," Nkem said without hesitation. "I've already lost a marriage, my family's respect, any illusion of normalcy. I'm not losing the company. I'm not losing the future I'm building for Zara. Whatever this person wants, whatever they think they know, I'll handle it. The next day, Nkem arrived at Rhapsody's 15 minutes early, wearing a simple dress and minimal makeup, looking like exactly what she was pretending to be, a middle-class divorced woman meeting someone for lunch. The restaurant was upscale but not flashy, the kind of place where business was conducted over overpriced pasta and undercooked steak. At exactly 2 p.m., a woman walked in, mid-30s, expensively dressed, with the kind of confident stride that came from never being told no. It took Nkem a moment to recognize her. Yetunde, Tunde's girlfriend, now fiancée according to the massive diamond ring on her finger. Mrs. Okonkwo, Yetunde said, sliding into the seat across from her with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Thank you for coming. Nkem kept her face neutral, even as her mind raced. You sent those texts? I did. I thought it was time we had a conversation, woman to woman. About what? Yetunde leaned back, studying her with an expression that was equal parts curiosity and calculation. About the fact that you're not who you pretend to be. About the fact that while Tunde is paying you spousal support like you're some struggling single mother, you're actually running a company worth billions. Did you really think no one would find out? So someone had talked, someone in her organization, or someone who'd seen something they shouldn't have. Nkem felt a flash of anger, but kept her voice steady. How did you find out? Does it matter? The point is, I know, and soon, Tunde will know, unless what? Yetunde's smile sharpened. Unless we come to an arrangement. See, I don't actually care that you're rich. Good for you. What I care about is Tunde. He's mine now, and I won't let you ruin what we have. I have no interest in ruining anything. I'm divorced. I've moved on. Have you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're playing some kind of long game. You let him think you're weak, that you need his money, his support. And then what? When he finds out the truth, you get to watch him realize he threw away a millionaire for… What? For me? The insecurity in Yetunde's voice was almost touching. Almost. She wasn't confident in her position, wasn't sure that Tunde's feelings for her were real or just convenience. And now she saw Nkem as a threat, not because Nkem wanted Tunde back, but because Nkem's success made Yetunde's victory feel hollow. What do you want, Yetunde? I want you to tell Tunde the truth about your company, your money, everything. Tell him you don't need his support, that you've been lying to him. And then I want you to disappear from his life completely. No more child support negotiations, no more court appearances, nothing. Let him move on in peace. Nkem almost laughed. You want me to give up the child support he owes his daughter? Support that pays for her medication, her medical care, her education, so that he can feel better about abandoning her? I want you to stop pretending you need it. You don't. You're richer than he is now, probably, so why are you still taking his money? Because it's not my money, it's Zara's. It's what her father owes her, what he should want to provide for her. I don't need Tunde's money, but my daughter deserves every kobo of it. Yetunde's face hardened. Then I'll tell him myself, about your company, about everything, and trust me, he won't be happy. He'll come after you with everything he has. His lawyers will tear you apart in court. They'll make you look like a liar, a manipulator, someone who played victim while secretly building an empire. Is that what you want? What I want, Nkem said, her voice dropping to something cold and dangerous, is for you to understand something very clearly. I don't care what Tunde thinks of me. I don't care if he's angry or hurt or feels betrayed. I divorced him. He divorced me. It's over. But my daughter, she will get what she's owed. And if you or Tunde try to take that away from her, I will destroy both of you so thoroughly that you'll wish you'd never learned my name. The threat hung in the air between them. Yetunde's confidence wavered, just for a moment, as she realized she wasn't dealing with the broken, desperate woman she'd expected. You can't threaten me, Yetunde said, but her voice lacked conviction. I'm not threatening you, I'm educating you. You came after a mother protecting her child. That was your first mistake. Your second mistake was thinking I'm still the woman Tunde married, someone who can be intimidated or manipulated. I'm not that person anymore. Now, is there anything else? Or can I get back to my life? Yetunde stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Other diners looked over, curious about the drama unfolding. You're going to regret this. When Tunde finds out, he'll realize he made the biggest mistake of his life. And you, Yetunde, will realize that you didn't win a prize. You won a consolation. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a daughter to pick up from school. Nkem walked out of the